What would you do if your neighbor called the police on you? Just for moving into your own home? That's exactly what happened to Maya, a decorated Army veteran, when she arrived in a quiet neighborhood. One phone call turned her life upside down, until the moment she showed the officers her military ID. What happened next didn't just silence her neighbor, it shook the entire community. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, life moved at a predictable pace. Everyone knew each other's names, routines, and even favorite coffee orders. The mailman stopped for friendly chats. Kids played basketball in the driveways and on Sunday mornings. Most families could be found sipping coffee on their porches, waving at whoever passed by. Olivia had lived there for more than 10 years. To her, the neighborhood wasn't just a place to live, it was her territory. She prided herself on keeping things orderly, and often thought of herself as the unofficial guardian of the block. If a car drove by too slowly, Olivia was the first to notice. If someone's grass grew a little too tall, she whispered about it to her closest neighbors. She didn't mean to be unfriendly, at least that's what she told herself. But deep down, Olivia didn't like surprises. She liked control. So when a moving truck rumbled down the street one Saturday morning, Olivia's heart skipped a beat. She pressed her face against the blinds, peeking through the narrow slats like she always did when something different was happening. The back door of the truck swung open, and out stepped a tall black woman, carrying boxes with effortless strength. She moved with a steady rhythm, calm, confident, and purposeful. Even from a distance, Olivia could tell this woman wasn't the type to shrink into the background. She had a presence that commanded attention. The woman didn't waste time hiding. She walked up to a few neighbors who were outside watering lawns and smiled warmly. "Hi, I'm Maya, just moved in." "Nice to meet you." Her voice carried kindness, and the neighbors responded in kind. Some returned her smile. Others offered quick greetings, and one even stepped forward to help with the heavier boxes. It was clear that Maya wasn't a stranger to hard work, and she wasn't shy about building connections. But from behind her blinds, Olivia's eyes narrowed. She didn't like change, and she especially didn't like the idea of a stranger moving in right next door. In her mind, this street was hers to oversee, and now someone had come along to disrupt the balance. What Olivia didn't know was Maya's story. She didn't know that Maya had recently retired from military service after years of sacrifice and discipline. She didn't know that Maya had chosen this neighborhood for peace and stability, the very things Olivia claimed to value. Instead, Olivia only saw what she wanted to see. And that judgment, as unfair as it was, set the stage for everything that was about to unfold. Over the next few days, Maya began to settle into her new home. She decorated her living room, planted a few flowers near the front porch, and even waved at neighbors as she passed by. She was respectful, friendly, and never made unnecessary noise. To anyone watching with an open mind, she was just another neighbor finding her place in the community. But Olivia didn't see it that way. Every time Maya walked to her car, Olivia was at the window, scribbling notes into a little notebook she kept for neighborhood watch. Every time Maya carried groceries inside, Olivia leaned over to her husband and whispered, "Something's off about her. She's hiding something." Her husband rolled his eyes. "She's just living her life, Olivia. Let it go." But Olivia couldn't. The more she watched, the more her imagination twisted ordinary actions into something suspicious. If Maya stayed up late, Olivia convinced herself it was shady. If Maya brought in furniture at night, Olivia muttered about odd behavior. To Olivia, Maya's very existence felt like a disruption to the order she had worked so hard to protect. Maya, of course, noticed the stares. She wasn't naive. She caught Olivia's eyes peeking through curtains, felt the tension in the way Olivia's smile never quite reached her eyes. But Maya had lived through worse, long deployments, tough missions, and battles that tested both body and soul. Compared to all that, one nosy neighbor seemed like a small thing. Still, deep down it stung. All Maya wanted was peace, community, and a sense of belonging. Instead, she felt judged before anyone truly knew her. One evening, as Maya unloaded the last pieces of furniture from her garage, Olivia's patience finally snapped. She stood at her window, arms crossed, convinced that she had seen enough. In her mind, she was protecting the neighborhood from a threat no one else was willing to acknowledge. Olivia picked up the phone and dialed 911. "Yes. Hello?" she said firmly, her voice carrying false authority. "There's a suspicious woman who just moved in next door. I don't think she belongs here." "You need to check this out." The operator's tone was calm and professional. "What exactly is she doing that's suspicious, ma'am?" Olivia hesitated. She hadn't expected the question. After a pause, she muttered, "She's moving things at odd hours. I don't feel safe." Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights lit up the quiet street. Maya froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. Police cars were pulling into her driveway. 2 police officers stepped out of the squad car, their flashlights cutting through the quiet evening. The neighborhood had already started to gather, curious eyes peeking from porches and behind curtains. Maya stood in her driveway, hands relaxed but her heart heavy. She knew this wasn't the first time someone had looked at her with suspicion, and she feared it wouldn't be the last. One officer cleared his throat as they approached. "Ma'am, we got a call about suspicious activity. Can we see some identification?" His voice wasn't hostile, just cautious, but Maya could feel the weight of being under a microscope. Yet again. She sighed softly, already piecing together what had happened. It didn't take much to guess who had made the call. Still, Maya stayed composed. She reached calmly into her bag. "Of course, officer," she said, handing over her driver's license, but then, almost as an afterthought, she pulled out something else, her worn but well-kept military ID. She placed it firmly into the officer's hand. The officer's eyes shifted from her license to the small card. His expression changed immediately. His posture eased and his tone softened. "You served?" he asked, respect edging into his voice. "Yes," Maya said evenly. 8 years in the U.S. Army. I just retired. I moved here for some peace and quiet. I didn't expect this. For a moment, silence hung in the air. The officer gave a respectful nod, clearly realizing the mistake that had been made. His partner leaned closer, glancing at the ID, and gave Maya a look that said more than words could. Recognition, gratitude, and maybe even a little shame. But before the officers could speak further, the sound of quick footsteps broke the moment. Olivia came storming out of her house, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Her voice carried over the hushed crowd that had gathered. "Officers, I told you, she doesn't belong here. You need to do something before—" And then she stopped. Her eyes locked on the card in the officer's hand, the unmistakable proof of service, sacrifice, and honor. Olivia's face drained of color. She froze mid-sentence, the words catching in her throat. In that instant, the truth hit her like a brick wall. The woman she had judged without cause, the neighbor she had treated like a criminal, wasn't just any newcomer. She was a veteran who had risked her life for the very freedoms Olivia enjoyed every single day. The officers exchanged a quick glance, their decision clear. There was no crime, no threat, just a woman moving into her new home. One officer straightened his stance and handed Maya back her ID with a small nod of respect. Then he extended his hand. "Thank you for your service, ma'am," he said firmly, his tone carrying genuine admiration. Maya shook his hand politely, offering only a small smile in return. She had heard those words many times before, but in this moment they carried an even heavier weight. Her calm composure only made the contrast sharper when everyone's eyes turned to Olivia. She now stood frozen in place, her confidence gone. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. The neighbors who had quietly stepped outside to watch were whispering among themselves. They had seen the flashing lights, heard Olivia's accusations, and now they were witnessing the truth unfold. A woman who had risked her life for the country had just been treated like an intruder in her own driveway. One neighbor leaned closer to another and whispered, not quite quietly enough, "She's a veteran? Wow. Olivia really messed up." The murmur spread quickly, each word slicing through the silence. Olivia's cheeks burned red as she realized everyone was looking at her, not with agreement but with disapproval. She had embarrassed herself, exposed her prejudice, and dragged the police into a situation that never should have happened. For the first time in a long time, Olivia felt the weight of her own actions pressing down on her chest. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was shame. Shame that she had disrespected someone who had done far more for her than she would ever understand. Maya, however, didn't lash out. She didn't raise her voice or deliver the angry outburst that some might have expected. Instead, she turned her steady gaze toward Olivia and spoke calmly, her voice firm but measured. "I don't need to prove myself to anyone," Maya said. "But next time, maybe ask questions before you call the police." The words cut deeper than any shout ever could. They were simple, but they carried power, truth wrapped in grace. Olivia lowered her head, unable to respond. For once, the self-proclaimed guardian of the block had nothing to say. From that day forward, everything in the neighborhood felt different. The whispers that once carried doubt about Maya had been replaced with admiration. People who had stood silently on their porches that night now greeted her with smiles. Children waved enthusiastically when she passed by, and parents encouraged them, whispering, "That's our neighbor. She served our country." Slowly, brick by brick, Maya became part of the community she had hoped for. Neighbors stopped to chat when she was out gardening. Some even asked for advice, impressed not only by her military background, but also by the quiet strength she carried with her. Maya didn't boast, didn't bring up what had happened with Olivia, and never demanded respect. It simply grew naturally, rooted in her grace and dignity. But Olivia's story unfolded differently. For weeks, she avoided eye contact. She crossed the street if Maya was outside. The shame weighed heavily on her shoulders. At first, Olivia tried to convince herself that she had only been concerned for safety, but deep down she knew the truth. Her fear and prejudice had blinded her. She hadn't seen a neighbor. She had only seen what her mind wanted to see. In the silence of her home, Olivia replayed that night over and over again. The flashing lights, the crowd, the moment the military ID appeared in the officer's hand. Each memory was a reminder of how quickly judgment can turn into humiliation. But within that shame also came growth. For the first time in her life, Olivia began questioning her assumptions, her biases, and the way she looked at people who were different from her. The truth was simple, yet powerful. Sometimes prejudice blinds us from seeing what's right in front of us. Sometimes assumptions make us enemies when we could be allies. And often the person we judge the harshest has already given more, sacrificed more, and endured more than we will ever know. Maya didn't need Olivia's approval. She never had. Her respect had already been earned long before she moved to that quiet street. But Olivia needed Maya's example to change her perspective. And in the end, that single moment, seeing that military ID, was enough to silence hate, humble pride, and remind everyone that true character is defined not by skin color, not by assumptions, not by fear, but by the choices we make and the lives we touch. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more powerful and inspiring stories. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.